proud to be a community-focused organization and a place where we can share and sustain ideas and creativity, even if it means we can't gather in person. I'd like to thank Petri and Fletcher for appearing tonight to help make that possible. Town Hall is currently pursuing options for producing more virtual content, such as tonight's live stream, and many of our past talks are available in video or podcast form on our digital media library. For viewers who want to watch this broadcast with closed captioning, we recommend viewing our stream via our YouTube page. To enable real-time closed captioning, click the CC button in the bottom right corner of the video player. The video will be available for rewatching immediately following tonight's broadcast. Town Hall is adding new events and podcasts every day. Upcoming programs include Doctor and bioethicist Ezekiel Emanuel on which country has the best healthcare. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Nicole Hannah-Jones discussing race and journalism, and continuing installments of Earshot Jazz live from the forum. Town Hall and the nonprofit community at large have been put under significant strain due to the recent wave of event cancellation. We hope you will consider extending your generosity to help support us during this difficult time by making a donation by clicking the donate button at the bottom of your screen or becoming a member. You can make a donation online or text Town Hall to 44321 to give. Our partner booksellers have also been hit by the negative effects of the COVID outbreak. You can use your support as well. If you're interested in supporting local independent bookstores by purchasing a copy of the book being presented tonight, please use the link on the live stream page to purchase through third place books. Tonight's presentation will be about 30 to 45 minutes, followed by Q&A. Petri and Fletcher will select questions from those submitted in the Ask a Question field at the bottom center of your screen. You can ask a question at any point during the program. You can also vote on which questions will be addressed by clicking the arrow next to the question to upvote it. We cannot guarantee that we will be able to address every question, but we will try to get to as many as possible. Please keep your questions concise and in the form of a question. Town Hall's work is made possible through your support and the support of our sponsors. Our Arts and Culture series is supported by For Culture, Arts Fund, Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, and Wyncote Foundation Northwest. Finally, Town Hall is a member-supported organization, and I'd like to thank all of our members watching tonight. Alexandra Petri is a Washington Post columnist offering a lighter take on the news and opinions of the day. Her work has also appeared in the Denver Post, the Harvard Crimson, Muck Rack, and others. Petri is the author of the book A Field Guide to Awkward Silences, and she was named a Forbes 30 Under 30 Media Luminary in 2018. Phyllis Fletcher is a senior editor and occasional contributor for American Public Media Podcast, a podcast network for curious listeners telling human stories. Before podcast, she was a public radio journalist covering Northwest news and politics. Fletcher is a founding co-producer of School on the Chain. Petri's book, Nothing is Wrong, and Here's Why, is the subject of tonight's event. Please join me in welcoming Alexandra Petri and Phyllis Fletcher.
Hey, thank you very much, Megan. Hey, Alexandra.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us tonight. You know, we're a city of readers, and we all could use a laugh right now. So I'm really excited to get to talk to you tonight, and I know everybody watching is too. And I have to say, buy this book, click that green button to get it at third place. I just got to power through it. Yay! There it is. I just got to power through it. Oh, it looks beautiful. And it's the most beautiful book. And I had this sense of glee while I was reading it, like kind of that feeling like when you're a kid and you're reading something you're not sure you're supposed to read, because it's like it reminded me of oh, I'm gonna get in trouble for this. For whatever reason, it gave me that vibe, and that could be my hang up, I don't know, but it made me wonder if there was a memorable reaction that you had to anything you may have written as a kid. And especially if you got in trouble. I don't know if you ever got in trouble for anything you'd wrote as a kid.
So I feel like I was, that thing where when you read a lot of stuff as a kid and your vocabulary grows faster than your ability to pronounce words. And so you're maybe it's, I was misled, like
Right.
somebody's been misling me, and maybe that's the word, or segues, or connecting people together. And
Sure.
I felt like it was like that, but for like the content as well. So I got a lot of like youth Shakespeare type stuff where my parents were like diligently like, let's read you like Macbeth for babies, and which it's not literally Macbeth for babies, but sort of that vibe.
Sure.
And so I was like, I'm going to do this too. I'm going to write something just like what I saw. And so there was all of like little me trying to process Shakespeare. So there was a lot of like what I didn't understand was a sexual innuendo, because it just went completely over. It says like, I will go to the bed of that person. And so there was
not
that,
knowing that it was like,
yeah, exactly. I didn't know what was involved. I'm just like, I know that they certainly get fired up about it. And they were very nice about being like, interesting.
Right.
What a world you've portrayed.
Right.
It definitely seems realistic.
And then you were also a Garfield the cat fan, like reading Garfield in the paper. And that made me wonder too. So, okay, Dave Barry calls you the funniest person in Washington. Were you like obsessed with Dave Barry columns as a kid? Okay.
I was. I know. I completely like that'd be a great name for a band. Like, and I'm not making this up. I'm just like,
yes.
There's some phrases where he's just taken them so completely. You're like, you can't. I can't use them. Dave Barry has. Those will be enshrined with him.
Yeah.
But I would always like, that would be the first thing I would read every weekend. Would be like I'd flip to the back of the Post magazine, and there would be Dave Barry like glossy and nicely presented with like a fun cartoon. And I was just like, oh, this is a career it's possible to have.
Yeah,
this
no
is the
kidding.
Coolest thing. No, so
that's amazing.
I continue to be a big Dave Barry, like this man. He pioneered a genre, sort of.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. I was so happy for you when I saw that he had said that about you, and it's true. So in the alternate timeline of Trump not being our president, what do you think you'd be writing about right now?
I feel like there's like DC is still a ridiculous place,
yes.
Even if it's not like ridiculous and also actively harmful and dangerous and like seems pretty corrupt and bad. And so I feel like who knows, we might have gotten to the bottom of entirely different things, and that weren't just like, every day there's 16 fires. So it would be, I guess, I would know a lot less about the Trump family, or like have fewer theories. I would spend much less of my life just being like, how can I turn this into a joke?
Right.
Just sort of staring into the abyss, and the abyss slowly pulls out little pieces of you, or whatever it was that Nietzsche said happened when you stared into the abyss. Like there'd be less of that. So presumably with a slightly more whole soul,
right,
we would be able to be like, oh man, like they put forth 2 good bills to like reform serious problems, and one of them was slightly worse, and someone said something funny in the hallway, and there were tan suits. People wore tan suits. Yes. Like maybe I would just be really excited about tan suits, and just like all of my writing would be on that sort of a thing. Well, so I don't know. Just a different timeline.
Yeah, right. And so that part of the that part of your book that explores the timeline we're in right now, the brightest timeline, about how great everything is these days and just amazing and wonderful. I noticed that as we moved along chronologically, we went from an essay in October 2016 to an essay in January 2017. And so obviously the greatest moment of that timeline occurred in there. And I'm wondering what you were writing about at that time.
I remember at that time, I think my column, like the weekend before the election, was like, so either we can make plans after the election, or we all need to go like hide in a bunker somewhere, and everything, and like the earth will be sown with chaos. Or like maybe we can hang out and like get drinks, or and that it turned out that was about it was just, but it felt, the possibility seemed much more like we wouldn't literally be doing, like the land would not literally be ravaged by disease and chaos in this. It's like you don't like it when your metaphors get taken by reality. Like something should stay metaphors. Like you shouldn't, because it's not funny when it's like real life horror is tragedy. Like if it's it's
life wasn't supposed to imitate your particular art.
Exactly.
And it did. Darn it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I love that you do in your book also is skewer our own industry. So thank you for that, of skewering media, because we deserve it. I love the list of what to call racist remarks instead of calling them racist remarks. And my favorite one, I have to say, is heritage-loving remarks. So thank you for that.
Oh,
And I want to know if you think, like, how are we doing talking about racism in journalism? Have we gotten any better since you made that list?
I think slightly better, because I feel like you see much less racially tinged. Like, there used to be racially tinged. Everyone would be like, "Oh, something tinged it," and like all these sort of objectless verbs were like floating around, like subjectless verbs. These things were inflammatory, or like someone. It would be amazing how passive these constructions would be.
Right.
And I think you do still see that, but people have been they snap and push on it way more quickly, because it's just a thing that people are like, one of our jobs is to describe things as they are, and hopefully you can say this is racist, and that's better information for people than like a remark that was tinged with wisps of mercury. Right. Like, what is this trying to say?
The faint whiff of the taint of racism.
Yeah. Racially cloudy with a hint of controversy meatballs.
Yeah. I also love so in the Greatest Timeline section, every story I have read about Trump supporters in the past week, which was amazing. And I love that you made fun of how all those articles were basically the same. And I would love to hear like what was wrong with that whole genre in that moment, like in kind of like late 2016, early 2017. What was going on, do you think?
Well, I feel like there were two things where it's like people were like, "Oh, we're really eager to figure out how this happened," but also people they were excited to accept like the first explanation that was put to hand. So it's like, I'm gonna go and sit down in a diner, and whoever talks to me, that'll be why Donald Trump was elected.
Yes.
So it'll just be that. I'll go to a gas station and someone will come up to me and I'll be like, "This was why." And I just feel like if you don't, there's deeper and more complicated reasons that Donald Trump was elected, and like he appealed to like racism, but like just the stuff that, instead of just going and sitting at a gas station and being like, here's a melancholy portrait of a very specific sort of person. There's other ways of telling that story and explaining what happened there. And I just got very sick of seeing this one specific, because it's not like to make fun of the people who get like exemplar. If there's a word for when you're like made an example of, that's not a word. When you're used as an example in a story like this, where it's just like, you're not like a person, you sort of become a type. And I feel like I also sort of wound up flapping them into types, and I hope like a humorous way to be like, this is a bad thing we're doing, not like these people are ridiculous.
It was clear to me that you were skewering the writer and the editorial institution that reduced people to those stereotypes. I felt like it was clear who the joke was on, and it was pretty funny, and we deserved it, I have to say, as an industry. Has there been a kind of thing yet in your column that an editor has had to be like, can't take it that far, or had to spike anything or try to reel you back in, anything like that?
For the most part, I've been lucky where my editor's like, he sort of knows what I'm doing and is like, go for it, let's figure out. And if I'm like, because I'm more like worried that I like, I did a piece recently about like Donald Trump's favorite Bible stories, and I was worried because like people feel strongly about their Bible stories. I'm an Episcopalian, so I like know all of the Bible stories, and I'm like excited to put on a bow tie and go be polite to someone. And that to me, like they're all like, the joke is like Episcopalian hell is where you're sent if you use the wrong salad fork. It's just like, I don't know.
That is true, though.
Yeah, no, you have to distinguish amongst the forks, but use the fork. But so I was like, I don't want to be like, ha ha ha, the Bible is silly, because I wasn't trying. So it's good to have an editor who's able to like be like, I hear what your concern is, and if you're concerned about that, maybe capitalize this and don't capitalize that, or like, get rid of the millipede Jesus, or put millipede Jesus back. Yeah.
Outside of the Washington Post newsroom, do you think you know anyone personally who has actually read the Mueller report?
Ooh, I feel like my friends are weird enough that maybe a couple of them, but
Yeah.
like that's just a sad referendum on my friend group and not
I loved your book review or your book report on it. That was amazing, and I'm sure highly accurate. And again, if you want gems like this, you need to buy the book. You need to click that green button. You have to get it from Third Place immediately right now, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. And also thank you for rewriting the giving tree into something more just. The privilege tree, that was amazing. I feel like so many of us grew up with like our mothers crying to that story. When did you realize that story, the giving tree, was insanely messed up?
Oh my God. I feel like I didn't get it early enough for me to be just like, this is normal. I feel like I got it first like at camp or something, and I was just like, we haven't what excuse he did and the tree's not fixed. He just he just took the tree's entire body and just left, and the tree's happy about this.
Terrible.
And I kept thinking like, well, maybe it'll like make sense. Because you know, like all the fairy tales, like Tolkien has this thing where he's like, fairy tales aren't necessarily for the young. They just wind up being given to the young the same way like your old furniture winds up in the child's nursery.
Right.
And I'm like, maybe it's like that kind of a logic where like actually it's super dark and like people's feet are being cut off. But no, it was just like a bad moral. And
sad. It was terrible. The privilege tree is much more accurate. So thank you for that. Because you're in DC, I have to ask, what's up with the fireworks? I keep hearing like firework reports from all over the country.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of them. I keep thinking that people maybe are just baking potatoes incorrectly. Like they're not perforating them enough, and that's what the sound is. But yeah, it seems like it's sort of, so people have decided this is a fun thing to be doing. I've heard more than I've seen them, but it's leading up to the 4th of July. We've got, it's a thing that you can do, hopefully not inside your home, because that's how you get injured.
Yeah, yes. Don't try this at home, kids. I love your pieces in the book about school shootings. I also love your piece about the sorcery of a cell phone that magically turns into a gun in the hand of a Black man. And I'm sure this is like so annoying for people who are on book tour, but I'm going to just read a little bit that really moved me. You wrote about the cell phones that magically turn into a gun in the hand of a Black man. And then, Black man gets shot as a result. That is what makes these deaths justified, that moment of fear that transforms something ordinary, a father, an iPhone, and makes it deadly. If these things could not be, if there were no fearful magic involved, these deaths would be utterly senseless. And I feel like that's such a smart, a unique way to write about racism, and it's like devastating at the same time. And it made me think about like your process, and when something terrible happens, like how soon are you able to see what's funny or absurd about it? And then how soon do you feel like you're able to like say that and speak that out loud and then turn it into something that you write or you publish? I guess it's kind of like a very annoying way of being like, what's your process? But I'm interested in that moment of like, wow, this is terrible, and like, boom, I see what's funny about it.
Yeah, no, I feel like, well, thank you. I'm really glad that that spoke to you, because I feel like the hardest part of that was just like there was nothing funny about what had happened. It was like so many things are these days where it's like absurd and it shouldn't happen without being funny. It's just like something about the world is broken for this to occur. And I was trying to figure out, like, because I didn't want to like not say anything about it because it was just so completely wrong and so completely terrible. But I wanted to try to be like, if you could see this as like a brokenness as opposed to just like get out of the sort of the usual way of thinking about it. So I started like, because nobody was doing any harm. They were just holding cell phones. And it was just, you had to believe that things that weren't possible could happen in order to respond to people as anything other than people who were deserving of your protection. And so, I don't know, it came from a place of rage, I guess, and like sadness, as opposed to like, here's the joke and the joke. Because like, and so I feel like and then people usually at the end of like a column like that, they'll be like, I thought you were doing a lighter take on the news. And it's like, no,
What's the lighter take? Yeah.
Yeah, just read what I was saying.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I found that just really awesome and sharp. And you also moved me in a similar way in how to sleep at night when families are being separated at the border. And your refrain is the trick is to forget that they're children. And the direction that you took that, like I was sitting on the couch like, okay, I cannot cry right now because then my eyes will be all red for this event. So I hate you for that. So thank you. But every damn word is true that you wrote. And I really want to thank you for writing that. And it's one of the reasons that I feel like your book is an important chronicle of this time. And people really do need to click that green button right now, not to be too much of a huckster about it. But that was one of the best things I've read about this crisis. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I just feel like sometimes the best way of describing what's going on isn't to just be like, here's what's going on. Like when you put it in newsy terms, it can sometimes just feel like, oh, this is a thing that's happening, and this is a thing that should be happening. And those two are not the same. And so trying to like, sometimes I feel like I get a tool set that I wish more folks just writing straight news got to have, where you try to be like, how do I try to do something with words to indicate that this is different than the sort of thing that we should just be like, this was the news and we flipped it from the news. Mm-hmm. So I like just trying to use whether it's like fairy tales or just heightening in some way. Because like you can't just be like, but this plus one more thing, and then if you add that one more thing, everyone will say, oh, this is like that was too much. It's already too much. So it's like, how do you sort of reel people back into their sort of humanity on it?
Yeah, I hope that people who are, because I've done, I've been in the like hard news journalism side, and I've been in the like arts and humanities side of producing audio stuff. And I mean, I feel like there's just so much that, that people can learn from your work, as far as like, yes, we do have the right and the responsibility to be blunt about what's happening. So I bet you have a lot of admirers at the Post. At least I hope that that's the case.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of folks who are nice enough to say nice things.
Yeah. Oh, good. Something else that you did that I loved. It really read like a poetry section to me. The sample sentences that are supposed to be a grammar lesson, but they show how we talk about rape. And the one that just really made me go, what, was when you said, so it's like verb conjugate stuff. She went on to lead a productive life. So how bad can it have been? She did not go on to lead a productive life. So how can we trust what she has to say? We really do that, don't we? Like culturally and like in the legal system, like we do that exact thing that you laid out there.
Yeah. No, I feel like just trying to reduce it to like, here's just how it looks if you take away all of the things that are like sort of clouding your mind. Because you're always like, well, on principle, like this makes total sense. But then the specifics of it are always like, they always throw you off a little, like, well, no, but like she did this, or like, oh, but he did that. And then suddenly everyone's like, well, like, yeah, but there's this like mephitic cloud of stuff that gets away from like, and so I want to just like strip it down to the verb and be like, this is what we're saying every time. And
yeah, you nailed that. I also want to thank you for upholding the journalistic tradition of both sidesism and giving us the perspective of a measles germ in the vaccination debate. The measles germ who wants to go to Disney World also.
Yeah, no,
why shouldn't I get to go?
Yeah, I think it's only fair if we're hearing perspectives on these things that we should, like, if we're going to hear from people who think that measles are bad and should not be at Disney World, we got to find whoever's saying the opposite of that. And I know people are like, well, anti-vax, that's probably the opposite. No, I think pro-measles, like an active culture, or that's the most, which is funny. I'm glad that like, I'm sorry that diseases have continued to become even more relevant since the
I know.
Measles had its say. I
Yeah.
was sort of hoping that like that would be we'd put that
That would
back
be
in
the
the
final
box.
word. Yeah.
Yeah, because
No.
I'm like, well, these 4 years, they were like decades, and now it's like these 3 months have been another 4 decades.
Dude,
So it's
for real. Yeah, I'm like, you must be cranking out material right now.
no, I'm like wizened and gray.
Exhausted.
Yeah, no, the second I unplug this computer, I'll just shiver back into dust. I sleep in a crypt now. I don't know why exactly. I guess just to comport with my excessive wornness.
Well, I'm going to ask folks for their questions real quick in just a minute here, but so go ahead and type your questions in. And I want to ask you right before we turn to that, that one of the things I saw written about you and your first book was that interesting things start to happen when you stop caring what people think. And I want to know how you do that.
Well, I think it's not like I don't care what people think. That's just like you being an asshole. But
Right.
but when you stop like caring whether people will be like, but if you always are like, no, but if I showed people that like vulnerable part of myself that's like sincere about stuff, then no one will ever get to really appreciate the things that you're into, and you'll like never find your people. Like, I don't know. If I'm like a gigantic nerd, I have multiple Jabba the Hutt inflatable suits just waiting for in case we need a sexy Halloween, to get started. And
Right.
I feel like if I'd been like, but like, how will that look to people? Then I wouldn't have like have friends who really knew me, or a spouse who is also like willing to. He's also a big Star Wars nut.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just, yeah. She said articulately, yeah. I just, yeah. No, it's.
So,
but also, you end up having more adventures if you're just like sincerely into the stuff you're sincerely into. Like one of the things I love the most in the world is the pun community, and I'm just like, I love to make bad puns, and I do this like weekly live chat at the Post, and people were like, well, if you like puns, there's this thing that happens every year called the O. Henry Pun Off, and it's like people come from all around America and definitely sometimes even the world to compete making puns. You should do it, and I've gone pretty much like every year since then, and I'm like, it's great. It's like a second family of like really into pun making people, and it's like you have to really be into it, but that's how you find your people, is just by being honest about like, no, I would really like to go and spend an entire weekend trying to think of wordplay on types of dog breed, like the Lhasa apps so good these days, but
well, we do have a fan with a question already, so I'm going to get to Alex here.
Alex, fellow Alex.
Yeah, exactly. Alex says, assuming getting people to laugh or smile is layer number 1 of the goal of your column, what is layer number 2?
Well, layer number 2 is, I think it's just a traditional column where you're trying to make an argument about something that's going on in the world, and like, should it not be? What else should be going on instead? And so usually, sometimes the first layer is just like, let me give you this news, because I think we all need to know what this news is. And hopefully, instead of screaming and running full speed into like a plate glass window, because then you could really hurt yourself, you will instead chuckle mildly at your laptop screen, and that'll be, I guess, slightly better. So sometimes it's just like, here's some news, let's try to yell at it together. And sometimes it's like, here's an argument about how I think things are broken, buried underneath a layer of jokes, or like, here's what I think you'd have to think about the world in order to, like, based on this one weird assumption you have, here's all the other stuff that I think would have to follow from that, which hopefully points to how bizarre the underlying assumption is.
Yeah, right. That something that you just said reminded me of like what has to be one of your biggest dunks ever is that one of your satire columns got included in like a White House news roundup because someone somewhere thought it was legit. How did you find out that had happened?
I found out because I got I think, honestly, I either got an email from somebody being like, did you see you were in the Daily 1600? I think that was first. And then I got a call from another reporter being like, so what's it feel like to be real news? And I'm like, oh no, I got to write on this or I'm going to scoop myself by being interviewed about what it's like to be real news. So that's when I found out. It was funny also hearing who in my life received the Daily 1600 list of like, the president says you can't miss this.
Right.
Which I now receive. And so I know all the articles that the president thinks I can't miss. I have yet to be included in it again. But I feel like the whole thing was that he sort of was hoping that once he took office, like the law was that like you had to be really nice to the president and say positive things because he was the president. And then everyone was like, no, we're just going to continue describing what you do as bad when it's bad. And if you do something good, I hope that we will say something positive about it. But so far, so good. And so he was like, they're going to say the inauguration was big. And so I was trying to be like, what is the coverage he'd like to have happen? And so it was in that spirit that I wrote this thing about the budget and how it was going to punch America back into shape. And by the end of the day, they had removed it from the mailing list. But for a few hours there, I'm like, man, that really was the ethos behind it. They really did want to replace all arts programs with a fighter jet. And I'm just glad they're coming out and saying it.
Amazing. I want to encourage you watching to ask your question. We get to go to Andrew now, who says, are we doomed if Trump wins the next election? And what will you do from the satire standpoint if he doesn't? Better from the writing standpoint or worse?
I think from a human being standpoint, like living on the planet, it would be better for him not to have a second term. And so, like, I think also it would be better from a writing standpoint because you won't just constantly be like terrified and depressed and filled with alarm. And I don't know, just you can be making fun of things that like people aren't getting as hurt by, hopefully. Like that's the goal. Because I would enjoy complaining about like the details of things that were basically agreeable. And yeah, I'm not optimistic about another four to squiggly question mark number of years of the Trump, what's the word, dynasty.
Right. Right. Squiggly question mark is wow. Yikes.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah. Well, I do want to, I really want to encourage you, if you have a question, I know how this goes. As soon as I say, no more questions, we're done, everyone's going to be like, wait, but my question.
I had something.
I know. So please ask your question. I have one from Megan who says, any chance you'll grab a book off that shelf behind you and do a quick summary? Even if not, thank you for giving the world I'm Grundle. I sure do love my arm. So it looks like Megan's a big fan.
Oh, Megan, yay.
Yeah.
Oh, man. No, I was the books behind me that are good to summarize. I kind of could do Anna Karenina because it's like I hated everyone in Anna Karenina except for the guy who liked to have food, but like Oblonsky just liked to have food, and he also was cheating on his wife, and he was a bad man. But everyone else was very annoying, and like except for the horse. The horse didn't deserve to die. That's my hot Anna Karenina take. The train was fine, the horse was fine, and everyone else was garbage, and I just like them. Also, I feel like Tolstoy is so disappointing because he's like, he's writing from a perspective of a dog, and the dog is like galloping along, and he's like, and the dog smelled this, and you're like, yes, that probably is how it's like to be a dog. Or he'll write from a tree, and the tree's like coming to life with like new sap, and you're like, wow, that probably is how the tree feels. And then he's like, and this woman was sitting there, and she was just glowing in her pregnant way, as all women do, and just no discomfort whatsoever, and just balmy and calm. And you're just like, no, Tolstoy, I've lost faith in you now. Just, I don't know. But he does such a good job for so long, and then you really fall off pretty quickly. But
Laszlo has a question. He wants to know, is Mike Pence funny?
I think there. I think it was George Will who said, like, not since like Nancy Reagan has a look of such mute adoration been found on like the face of somebody staring at the president. It was something like that. I'm like, I like that. Like, I don't know that he inherently is funny, but I think the attitude that he's been required to maintain vis-a-vis the president, where he's just like, he worships the water he walks on, and all of his words are spun gold, but also not take up too much room. It's just like a fascinating position to be in. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that to me is like the funniest thing about Mike Pence. And like, because I don't know, like, I think it's just like this, because he's always saying these balmy, just like really over the top, like, yes, indeed, my liege type things.
Right.
And you sort of want him to blink, not to like indicate that he's like okay and like that you can get him out, because I don't think he wants to be taken out, but just like, you know, it's good for your eyes to blink every so often.
I want his hair to do something different someday. That's my thing.
Yeah,
it's like
no, that's true.
It
just
like
it stays
doll
where it is.
hair that like kind of like how a Ken doll has that molded hair that goes onto its head. It's
no,
like
you could swap it out.
Yeah.
One day he'll just come in and it'll be like the same but orange.
Yeah, right. David wants to know, have you ever written anything as satire and had it come true?
Ooh, I did once. I wrote, it was like next, like the Trump administration would be like, because this is when I was like trying to figure out, like, can you just like push it to 11? And everyone would be like, oh, well, that example is too much. And it was like, because they were saying this one judge had to recuse himself because he was Hispanic. And I was like, well, next they'll say judges have to recuse themselves because they were female. And then they did that. And I was just like, oh, so there's no good comes down this road. I've got to find another way.
Right. Go ahead and put your questions in there now, and they can be comments too. It's okay. But we do definitely want your questions. So come on through with that. We got one from we got a couple that kind of go together. So let me go to Nancy first. Yeah, I'll go to Nancy. So Nancy, and then I'll do some name checks that we got from Ron, who has some specific questions. So Nancy first, how do you interact with the other Washington Post writers? And then Nancy's observation is they don't usually have much of a sense of humor, ... question mark.
I think some of them do. I feel like, and a lot of them, like, they do like really great journalism. I have like friends on the news side, because I'm like on the opinion side, so we're behind the wall of. But no, there are a lot of folks like Dave Barron with his like notebook, like doubtedly doing stuff, and like Robert Samuels writes like the best features, where he'll just go and like learn and he had like the most hilarious like tales of reporting from the trail, or like the around America, just like great moments in reporting. And this is like just making me like, I miss the people in the office. Remember when I used to go to an office?
Right. Remember those days? That was crazy.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Well, and so then Ron Irving wants to know, how do you interact with well, he says, what on earth do you talk about with Mark Thiessen and Hugh Hewitt? He says, how can you coexist with them?
Well, I feel like we don't really interact very much. Every so often I'll get tagged and they'll be like, nice one, Petra. And I'll be like, no, that's just Hugh Hewitt's column. But that, I'm sure he gets the same thing. So yeah, when we'll have to get together and just switch mail really quickly. And I'm sure we'll have it'll be a pleasant exchange.
It'll be a wacky sitcom. Candace wants to know, can you talk about the cover of the book? It's terrifying. Please hold up the book.
Oh, yes.
And remember, to get your own terrifyingly covered book, please click that green link and get it from Third Place. We love Third Place. But what is up with the cover of the book?
Oh yeah, no, it's got like a rubbery, pleasant texture. You can like, I'm going full like, is it QVC?
Yeah,
QVC, rubbery texture.
Vanna White. Yeah.
And if the cover is too scary, you can take it off, and there's this very plain, innocuous red cover underneath that is much less alarming. But this is no. So Norton was just like, describe your dream cover. And I'm like, my dream cover is like a famous classy painting, but like with like a little hat on it, just slightly modified to make it. So I originally was like, how about Hieronymus Bosch, like the one where you've got like the guy playing the flute out of like Satan's butt. And, and I was like, maybe that one, but that one was too busy. And they sent in this one, and I'm just like, oh, one of Goya's nightmare paintings, Saturn devouring his children with this MAGA hat. Like, it just felt like you can judge the book by its cover. This is pretty much what the book is like.
Right.
Where you've got your classic Titan. And I learned a lot of fun facts about the painting actually recently on a podcast that I was on, because the guy had researched the actual, like, how Goya had come up with it. And apparently it used to have like some real like phallic action going on that then got hidden, but then there was like some citation needed action going on the Wikipedia page. So I don't really know what the situation is there. I think like somebody went in and painted over it the way people keep going in and painting over like Jesus or whatever the painting is. Like they make it look like it's like a Lego or like it's a monkey or whatever. The gently restored it so that it was more tasteful. But like, Goya used to just sit in a room and eat underneath this. Like I love having it around the house because I wrote it and I think it's cool. But I also don't like love staring at it when I'm eating food. That's just not. There was like right across, I think, from two old men eating soup, which is this other creepy painting, which is just my favorite visual. Yeah. And it's literally the reason I didn't watch The Irishman, because I heard there was just a lot of old men eating soup during it. And I'm like, I don't have time. I don't have 3 hours of my life if they say it's mostly them eating.
No. We have a question from Irina, who wants to know, when you write satire, do you have to be funny first or critical first, or maybe both and some more?
Well, something that takes a while to figure out. Like, I know that there's something to be funny in whatever this was, and then how do I attack it? And so sometimes I just like go completely off the ranch, if that's a thing that you can do.
Sure.
It is now. Yeah. I'm leaning in. Yeah. And because a few weeks ago, the president just sort of said this offhand thing about like Virginia, if you don't, the governor's, watch out, he's going to take all of your guns, and then who will be guarding the potatoes? And I was just like, for some reason, that was just the funniest thing I'd ever heard, just like that out of context, like sentence. And I'm like, I'm going to try to explain, like, Ali Brosh in her first book, and apparently she's coming out with a new one, so get excited. Like she had this whole thing where she was trying to explain to other people why this kernel of corn on the floor was funny, and she just couldn't do it. And it was like the most hilarious thing in the world to her, and just utterly unintelligible to anyone else. And I'm like, something feels like that, and you're like, how do I? And so I'm like, I'll write a like 1,400 word story explaining why I think this is funny. And my poor editor, fortunately, he is like sort of on board with this, and it's nifty when he's like, I really hated to cut this. And I'm like, yes, I know. I put this in there knowing that you would hate to cut it. But like, we're both sad about losing the same dopey jokes about potatoes. I'm just like, good, we're in a good place. But
great.
Sometimes you start from like, here's the joke of it. And sometimes you're just like, I'm mad about this, and I don't know how to express why it's ridiculous. And so like, and sometimes then you just have to like circle around on it and take a walk or take a turn about the room in these times, or read something else, and just figure out how you go in. So it depends on which feeling you're going in with, like, I see the joke, or the grr.
Bobby very self-deprecatingly says, "Oh no, it's a process question," and then and then Bobby basically is asking how much of a badass you are, because Bobby says, "Do you have enough time to fiddle and smoosh your copy, or does it just land in a single spritz and is pretty much done?" I like the onomatopoeia of Bobby's, like how Bobby imagines your copy forming. It's amazing.
Yeah, like the fiddle, the smoosh, the spritz. Yeah. This also makes me sound like I'm in the kitchen doing this competently, which if anyone knows me is not my real wheelhouse. I keep claiming I can make cacio e pepe, and so once every 6 months I will like surge forth and like, I'm gonna make cacio e pepe. It's going to happen, and so I will get a bunch of cheese and I will grate it into a glutinous mass, and it'll be like putty, but also some noodles that don't have any seasoning on them with the layer of putty on them, and also some pepper. And I'll give it to my husband, and he'll be like, "I didn't ask you to make this. I don't want it."
Right.
And then
Nobody asked for this.
and I'll put it in the fridge, and then like months later, I'll be like, "What's this like sentient object?" So anyway, but the point is, cooking is bad and a challenge, but I am good at like eating things that other people cook, and I will just sit there and allow you to cook. But spritzing wise, sometimes it just comes out, and you're like, "Oh, good, this is in shape," and I just need to cut like 6 things. Because I always like to cut stuff. It's like the Coco Chanel thing. I mean, she was sketchy, but she had a good maxim, like, be sure to remove 1 article of clothing, and like take off 1 accessory, something like that. I thought that was her whole thing. So I like to take off 1 accessory. But
That's, that is good, because I can say, having been a reporter and then also having been, as I am now, an editor, like, I heard from one of my colleagues early on, like, give the editor like 1 thing to cut, just so they feel like they're doing something. And I'm like,
yeah.
Ooh. He's like, or spell like 1 thing wrong, so they really feel like they. And I'm like, oh, that's a good trick, actually.
Ooh,
Yeah, so
that's devious. I like that.
That's a trip from Robert Smith of NPR. Shh, nobody tell. Yeah. So Andrew wants to know, who are your favorite funny writers or humorists? Who inspires you? So we already gave Dave Barry the big shout out. Who else?
I mean, I'm a big fan of the now defunct Toast, R.I.P. the Toast, and like Ali Brosh, Lindy West, a pioneer of typing in all caps. Big fan.
Yep.
I love people who like made the internet their medium. Kate Beaton, who's like in comics, but I just love her like takes on history. Also, like, I mean, P.G. Wodehouse is a classic for just putting together sentences that like propound or just some of the funniest similes in like the English language. Like he and Raymond Chandler, I think, went to the same, like, whatever the British equivalent of a high school is. And I'm like, they had some English teacher, and he was just like, listen, here's how you do a simile. And they both came out of it because like they have very similar, very weird similes that they're always doing. Where it's like, she was a blonde who'd make a bishop kick a hole in a stained glass window, and like he looked out of place like a tarantula on a slice of angel food. And those are both Chandler, I think, but they could equally be Woodhouse. So I'm like, who is that English professor? I'm gonna track him down and like shake him by the hand. Right. So I just love, like, on the sentence level, just similes that you're like, I would never have thought of that, but now that's exactly how I see it.
Right. That's amazing. And I want to encourage you, please get your question in. We're about to wrap it up. I know you have a question, so please type it. And please also click the green button, get this book. It is awesome. All right. So we have an anonymous friend who wants to know, which column has gotten you into hot water and why?
Well, I feel like it definitely, sometimes I'll write one and I'll get like a response that I wasn't anticipating. So like, I recently did one that was like how to tell if your grandparent is an Antifa, like know the signs, because President Trump was like that 75-year-old man was like an Antifa agitator, and I was like, okay, the signs. And so the difficulty that was like from my own perspective, where I'm just like, I'm not yet. I hope to be a septuagenarian someday, but I did get like a bunch of emails from people who were like, "Hey, I think that like this is sort of ageist," and I'm just like, "This is my experience of like being a relative of like older people," where I'm like, so I had always like jokes about mahjong because like they have an arcane authority that I know nothing of, and that seemed like maybe it could be an Antifa thing. But I also was like, it sounds like you realize, oh, there's a person inside there that I wasn't thinking about. So I feel like there's like getting in trouble where like people on the internet are like mad. Like I did one about Mitch McConnell sitting on a throne of skulls confirming his like 3,000th judge, which I thought was like that's a bad thing. And all these, like, there's Mitch McConnell stands out there who are like, oh, he sounds more metal than ever before. You just made Mitch McConnell sound cooler, so think about what you've done. And I did think about what I did. My intention was not to make Mitch McConnell cooler. So I felt bad in different ways in both of those times. I was like, oh, you gotta not accidentally make Mitch McConnell sound like he's really gonna go ghost riding off on his flaming motorcycle, because that's an image that he needs to bolster his self-esteem with.
Right. Well, I have learned so much about you tonight. This has been amazing, and I know that everybody is going to click this green button, and everybody's going to support you and support Third Place Books. I'm so excited that we could do this even just virtually, and we really hope you come back around to Seattle next time.
I'd love
Thank
that.
you so much
Yeah,
for
for
doing
real,
this
to
tonight.
be in actual Seattle.
Yeah,
we
would love that.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes, it truly would.
Oh, thank you both so much. This was such a fun conversation. And like Phyllis said, please go smash that green button. Please pick up a copy of this book from Third Place. And you know what? I bet they also have Anna Karenina if you like trains. Hey. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. If you also feel so inclined, please go ahead and hit that donate button. Keep tuning into our Crowdcast channel. We've got a couple more events coming at you this week. All right, thank you again, Alexandra and Phyllis. This was so fun. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.